A woman's boot caught the edge of a porch step and she went down hard. Her knee hit the wood with a heavy crack. A small leather suitcase tumbled from her hand and burst open across the dirt. Dresses spilled out into the sun. A folded piece of paper skidded under the porch rail. She lunged to grab it before he could see. She was not fast enough. A man's hand closed around the paper first. He read it slowly. He did not say a word. Then he looked at her, and she looked back at him with eyes that had not slept in 3 full days. His name was Eli Hart. Hers was Clara Bell. And the paper in his hand was a marriage contract, signed by her father, without her knowledge or consent. What she whispered next changed both their lives forever. "Stay with me on this one." The dirt yard was still. Eli held the paper in his hand. He read it again. His jaw set hard. The woman on the porch did not move. She just stayed there on her knees. Her face was white. Her hands were shaking. She knew what was on that paper. She had read it on the stagecoach 2 nights ago by the light of a single candle. Eli folded the paper. He did not give it back. He looked down at her dresses scattered in the dirt. He looked at her bruised knee. He looked at her empty hands. "Get up," he said. His voice was not kind. It was not cruel. It was just tired. She tried to stand. Her boot slipped. He reached down and took her arm. He pulled her up like she weighed nothing. Then he let go, like he had touched a hot stove. "Inside," he said. He turned. He walked through the open door. He did not look back to see if she followed. She gathered her dresses with shaking hands. She picked up her suitcase. She climbed the porch step. She did not trip this time. She walked inside. The house was small. 1 main room, a stone fireplace, a heavy wooden table, 2 chairs, a door at the back, a ladder going up to a loft. There were no curtains. There were no flowers. There was nothing soft. A man lived here. Only a man. Eli stood at the table. He set the paper down. He set his hat down beside it. His hair was dark and cut short. His shoulders filled the doorway. He was younger than she had thought from the road. Maybe 30, maybe less. She had pictured a man her father's age. She had pictured someone who would smell of whiskey and tobacco and own her like livestock. She had pictured worse than that. The man in front of her was not what she had pictured at all. "Sit," he said. She sat. She kept her hands folded in her lap. She did not look at him. She looked at the paper on the table. The signature at the bottom belonged to her father, Caleb Bell. Her father was dying when he signed it. She knew that. Her father owed Eli's father money from a cattle deal 7 years ago. Eli's father was dead now, 2 months in the ground. The debt did not die. The debt passed to Eli. And her father, with no money and a daughter he did not know what to do with, had signed her name to that debt and put her on a stagecoach. "How old are you?" Eli asked. 23, she said. "Have you ever lived on a ranch?" "No." "Have you ever cooked for 10 men?" "No." "Have you ever shot a rifle?" "No." He was quiet for a long time. He looked at her face. He looked at her city dress. He looked at her hands. They were soft. They had never held a rope. They had never carried wood. "You can't stay here," he said. Her chest dropped. She had nowhere to go. She had no money. She had no people. Her father had been her only family, and the letter in her pocket said he had died the day after her stagecoach left. She was alone, completely alone. "I have nowhere," she said. He looked at her. Something moved behind his eyes. He pushed his chair back. He walked to the window. He looked out at the empty yard. He stood there a long time. Then he turned around. "You can sleep in the bed," he said. "I'll take the barn. We don't tell anyone in town about that paper. Not yet. You work the kitchen. You stay out of the corral. In a month, when the snow comes in, we'll figure something out. You go to Helena. You start over. Nobody owes anybody anything. Understand?" She nodded. She could not speak. He picked up the paper. He walked to the fireplace. He held the paper near the flame. Her breath caught. He stopped. He looked at it again. He folded it carefully. He slid it into a wooden box on the mantel. He closed the lid. "Just in case," he said. He did not explain. He picked up his hat. He walked out the door. The door swung shut. She sat at the table alone. She put her head in her hands. And for the first time in 3 days, Clarabelle cried. The first week was the strangest of her life. Eli woke before the sun. He was gone before she came down the loft ladder. He came back at noon for a quick meal. He left again until dark. He spoke when he had to. He did not speak when he did not. He never crossed the room toward her. He never raised his voice. He never asked her anything personal. He just worked. From dark to dark. She learned the kitchen by trial. The first loaf of bread she baked was hard as a brick. He ate 2 slices anyway. He did not complain. The second loaf was better. By the end of the week she could make biscuits that did not break teeth. She mended a tear in his work shirt without being asked. He looked at it that night. He ran his thumb over the stitches. He nodded once. He hung the shirt on the peg by the door. There were 3 other hands who worked the ranch. They lived in a bunkhouse 100 yards from the main house. Eli told them she was his cousin from St. Louis, here for the season. The men believed him. They tipped their hats when she crossed the yard. They never asked questions. On the 8th night, the dogs started barking. They did not stop. Eli sat up in the barn. He pulled on his boots. He picked up his rifle. He walked toward the house. Clara was already at the front window. She had blown out the lamp. She could see them in the moonlight. 3 men on horses. They were not from town. They had bandanas pulled up over their faces. One of them was already off his horse, walking toward the porch. Eli stepped out from the shadow of the barn. His rifle was up. "That's far enough," he said. The man stopped. The other 2 reached for their guns. "Don't," Eli said. They didn't. The man on the ground raised his hands. "We don't want trouble, mister. We just want the woman." Clara's heart stopped. Eli did not move. "What woman?" The man laughed. It was not a kind laugh. "Caleb Bell's daughter. Word travels. We know her father sold her. We know the contract came west. Her daddy owed our boss too. We'll take her off your hands. Save you the trouble of a wife." Eli's voice did not change. "Get back on your horse." The man looked up at the porch. Clara was at the window. The lamp was out, but the moon was full. He could see her shape. He smiled at her, the kind of smile that made her stomach turn cold. "Sweetheart," he called, "come on out. Save your husband the trouble." Eli's rifle clicked. The hammer drew back. "I said, get back on your horse." The man's smile dropped. He looked at Eli. He looked at the rifle. He looked at the steady hands holding it. He stepped backward. He climbed on his horse. The 3 of them rode out slow. They did not run. They did not gallop. They wanted Eli to know they would be back. When they were gone, Eli walked to the porch. He did not knock. He opened the door. Clara was standing in the middle of the room. She had a kitchen knife in her hand. Her knuckles were white around the handle. Eli looked at her. "Put it down," he said gently. She did not move. He stepped closer. He took the knife out of her fingers. He set it on the table. Her whole body began to shake. He did not touch her. He just stood there. "Who was your father?" he asked. "He was a farmer," she said. "He sold the farm. He went into a partnership with a man in Kansas City. The man cheated him. He owed money to everyone. He never told me. I thought we were just poor. I didn't know about Kansas City. I didn't know about your father. I didn't know about a marriage contract until I was already on the stagecoach. He told me in a letter at the station. He said he was sorry. He said it was the only way." Eli was quiet. "Was your father a good man?" "Yes," she said. "Once." Eli nodded. Then he would not have wanted you to be afraid in my house. Go upstairs. Lock the loft door. I'll be outside. I'm not going anywhere. She went up the ladder. She locked the door. She lay on the bed in her dress. She did not sleep. She listened. She heard Eli on the porch. She heard him walk the yard. She heard him talk to the dogs. She heard him sit down on the bottom step. He stayed there all night. In the morning he was still there. He stood up when she opened the door. There were shadows under his eyes. He looked at her. He almost smiled. He didn't. Breakfast, he said. Yes, she said. The next 4 days no one came. The dogs were quiet. The horses were calm. The men in the bunkhouse rode the fence line. They saw nothing. The bandits were gone. The week turned warm. Eli came home for lunch each day. He sat at the table. He ate her biscuits. He drank her coffee. He told her about a calf that had been born that morning. He told her the calf had white socks. He told her she should come see it. She walked with him out to the barn. He showed her the calf. She touched its forehead, pushed back against her hand. She laughed. It was the first time she had laughed in weeks. Eli looked at her when she laughed. Something in his face shifted. He looked away. That night, he ate dinner inside the house for the first time. He sat across from her. They did not say much. They did not need to. The fire crackled in the hearth. The wind was soft. The dogs slept by the door. He brought in an extra blanket and set it by the fire. He poured her a small glass of warm cider. He nodded at her glass. She nodded back. Outside, the world was still. The danger had passed. They both believed it. They both wanted to believe it. The kitchen clock ticked. The house felt, for one quiet night, like a home. The trigger came with sunrise. A horse came up the road at a full gallop. Eli was out the door before the rider crossed the gate. The rider was the sheriff. He pulled his horse hard. He swung down. He did not waste time. Eli, we've got a problem. Big one. There's a man in town claiming Caleb Bell's debt. Says he's bought it out from 3 different creditors back east. Says he holds paper on Bell's daughter and on 20 acres of your father's land. The acres your stream runs through. Eli went still. The stream was the only year-round water on the ranch. Without it, the cattle died in August. The ranch died. Everything died. Who is he? Eli said. The sheriff hesitated. It's Crane. Eli's eyes closed for a moment. Of course it is. The sheriff put a hand on his arm. He's got papers. He's got lawyers. He's at the bank now. He wants you in town by noon. Crane was the biggest landowner in the county. He had bought out 3 small ranches in 2 years. He bought through banks. He bought through debt. He bought through fear. He had wanted the Hart Ranch since Eli's father was alive. Eli's father had told him no. Eli had told him no twice. Crane did not take no for an answer twice in a row. Now he had a third way. Now he had Clara. Eli looked at the house. Clara was on the porch. She had heard. She had her hand at her throat. The conflict had changed. It was no longer about a strange woman with a forced contract. It was no longer about 3 bandits in the night. It was about the land. It was about the water. It was about everything the Harts had built for 30 years. And it was about her. Because Crane did not just want the deed. He wanted leverage. He wanted to own her too. The kind of man who collected things just to break them. Eli walked to the porch. Clara took 2 steps down. She stopped. Go, she said. Take me to the bank. Sign me over. Save the ranch. I am not worth this. Eli looked at her. He looked at her for a long time. No, he said. That was all. He walked past her. He went inside. He came back out wearing a clean shirt. He put on his hat. He took the wooden box off the mantel. He slid it under his arm. He climbed onto his horse. Stay in the house, he said. Lock the doors. Don't open them for anyone but me. If I am not back by dark, ride for the sheriff's wife. Do not ride for town. She nodded. He rode out. She watched him until the dust settled. In town, Crane was waiting at the bank with two men in black coats and a lawyer with thin glasses. Crane was tall and clean and smiling. He smiled like a man who had already won. He spread the papers on the desk. 3 signed promissory notes. 1 deed assignment. A copy of the marriage contract Clara's father had written. "It is very simple, Mr. Hart," Crane said. "You owe me. The contract gives me a legal claim on the woman. Marriage was never consummated. Father is dead. The debt transfers. I am willing to be reasonable. Sign over the south 20 acres. I tear up the contract. The woman is yours. Or refuse and the contract becomes mine. You will never see her again. And I'll still own your water inside a year." The lawyer slid a pen across the table. Eli did not pick it up. He opened the wooden box. He took out the original marriage contract. He set it on the table. "Read this one," he said. The lawyer read it. His face changed. He looked at Crane. "Sir." Crane snatched the paper. He read it. His jaw tightened. The paper Caleb Bell had signed before he died did not just promise his daughter. It also acknowledged the original debt was paid in full, by a separate cash payment, 3 months earlier. Eli's father had collected. He had simply never told anyone before he died. The marriage was a gesture of honor from one dying man to another, not a payment of debt. The debt did not exist. It had not existed for months. Crane had bought paper that was already void. Crane stood up slowly. His smile did not return. "This changes nothing," he said. "The contract still binds her." Eli stood up too. He was a head taller. "She is not livestock," he said. "She is a person. She came of her own will. She can leave of her own will. And the only paper that matters in this room is the one that says my father is paid. Good day, Crane." He walked out. He did not look back. He rode home at a slow trot. He was not finished. He knew that. Crane would not stop. Crane was not the kind of man who lost paper and walked away. Crane was the kind of man who came back at night with men with fire. But for now, this hour, he had bought her time. He had bought her safety. When he crested the rise and saw the house, she was standing on the porch. She was holding the rifle. She did not lower it until she saw his face. Then she set it against the rail. She ran down the steps. She ran across the yard. He stepped off the horse. She did not stop. She crashed into him. Her arms went around his neck. He stood frozen for 1 second. Then his arms went around her. He held her tight. He pressed his face into her hair. He let out a breath he had been holding for a week. If you are still with me on this one, hit that subscribe button now. The rest of the story is the part you are not going to want to miss. 3 nights later, the dogs barked again. This time they did not stop. This time there were more than 3 men. Eli was already in the house. He had not gone back to the barn since the day in town. He had set up a cot by the back door. Clara had pretended not to notice. She had been grateful every night. He blew out the lamps. He pushed her toward the back room. He handed her the rifle. He took down a second one from above the door. "How many?" she asked. He looked through the window. 6, maybe 7. Crane is with them. Her hands tightened on the rifle. "I know how to shoot now," she said. He looked at her. "You taught me last week." A small smile touched the corner of his mouth. "I did. Then trust me to do it." He nodded. "Stay at the back window. Anyone who comes around the corner, you fire once over their head. If they do not stop, you fire at them. Do not hesitate. Do not aim for the leg. Aim for the chest. Promise me." She did not want to promise. She promised anyway. He went to the front. He opened the door 6 inches. "Crane," he called. "Turn around. You are on private land." Crane's voice came back from the dark. "The land is going to be mine by morning, Hart. Walk out. Bring the woman." We will talk like men. Or stay inside and we will burn you out. A torch lit up in the yard. Then another. Eli's jaw tightened. The barn was 20 yards from the house. The hay was dry. One torch in the hayloft and the barn was gone. 2 minutes after that, sparks would jump to the house roof. He could not let that happen. He had to end it in the next 60 seconds. He stepped onto the porch with his rifle low. He walked 5 steps into the yard. He stopped. "You want the contract?" he called. "Come and take it." Crane laughed. "You walk into a fight with one rifle and a woman?" Eli did not answer. He waited. From behind him, the bunkhouse door opened. 3 ranch hands stepped out. Each had a rifle. Each had a kerosene lantern raised high. The yard lit up. Crane's men froze. Crane's smile dropped. He had not counted on the hands. He had not counted on the dogs. He had not counted on a woman at the back window with a steady aim. He had counted on a frightened bachelor and a city girl. He had counted wrong. The first man fired anyway. The bullet hit the post beside Eli's head. Eli fired back. The man dropped. The torches scattered. The horses spooked. One torch hit the dirt and rolled, harmless. Another hit the barn wall and bounced into a water trough. The third was dropped by a man already running. The hands fired into the air. The dogs charged. Crane's men broke. Crane himself spurred his horse. He rode straight at Eli. He had a pistol up. Eli did not move. A single shot rang out from the back of the house. Crane's pistol arm jerked. His pistol fell into the dirt. He pulled his horse hard and stared at the back window. Clara was there. The rifle barrel was still smoking. She had not fired over his head. She had fired at his hand. Exactly where she meant to. Eli walked forward calmly. He took Crane's horse by the bridle. "Off," he said. Crane swung down. He was holding his bloody wrist. He was no longer smiling. The sheriff arrived 10 minutes later. Someone in the bunkhouse had ridden for him at the first bark of the dogs. The sheriff put Crane in irons. The sheriff put the 2 surviving riders in irons. The dead man stayed where he fell until morning. When the wagons were gone, Eli sat down on the porch step. He looked at his hands. They were shaking now. They had not shaken during the fight. They were shaking now. Clara came out behind him. She sat down beside him. She did not speak. He did not speak. The dogs lay across their feet. After a long time, she put her hand over his. He turned his palm up. Their fingers closed. "My father said you need a wife," she whispered. Her voice was small. It was not afraid. It was honest. He was wrong about the why. He was wrong about the how. He was wrong about everything. But I have been thinking about it for a week. About this house. About these dogs. About the way you walked into that yard tonight. About the way you have not once raised your voice at me. About the way you slept by the back door so I would not be alone. He was wrong about the why. But he was not wrong. Eli looked at her. He was quiet for a long time. He looked at the dirt yard. He looked at the porch step they were sitting on. He looked at the moon over the barn. He looked at her hand in his. Then he took her hand. He brought it up. He kissed her knuckles. He held it against his cheek. "He's right," he said. The wind moved through the cottonwoods by the creek. The dog sighed. She leaned her head on his shoulder. He let her. He had nowhere else he wanted to be. They were married 3 weeks later. Not because of a contract. Not because of a debt. Not because a dying father had signed her name in shaky ink. They were married because she walked into the kitchen one morning and he looked at her over a cup of coffee and said, "I would like you to stay." And she said, "I am staying." And that was the whole conversation. The wedding was small. The preacher came out to the ranch. The 3 hands stood as witnesses in their cleanest shirts. The sheriff's wife brought a cake. Clara wore the simplest of the dresses that had spilled out of her suitcase on the day she fell on the porch step. She had washed it twice. She had pressed the wrinkles out with a flat iron over the stove. Eli wore a clean white shirt and the boots he wore every day. He had no other boots. She would not have wanted him in any other. She stood across from him in the front room. The fireplace was warm. The wooden box where the contract had once lived was still on the mantel. He had taken the contract out of it the night after Crane was hauled away. He had put the paper into the fire himself. They had watched it burn together. The box now held something else. His mother's ring. The preacher asked the questions. Eli answered. Clara answered. The preacher pronounced them married. Eli leaned down. He kissed her gently. The hands clapped. The dogs barked from the porch. That night, when the guests were gone, she stood on the porch in her wedding dress. She looked out across the yard. The moon was up. The barn was quiet. The cattle were down. Eli came out behind her. He stood beside her. He did not touch her. He did not have to. They stood there a long time. She turned to walk back inside. Her boot caught the edge of the porch step. She started to fall. His arm shot out. He caught her around the waist. He held her against him. She laughed. He laughed too. It was the first time she had heard him laugh out loud. It was a low laugh, a warm laugh, a laugh she would think about every day of the rest of her life. I have been waiting to do that since the day you arrived, he said. She put her hand against his chest. I have been waiting to fall, she said. The seasons turned. The first snow came in early. The cattle came down to the lower pasture. The bunkhouse hands wintered with their families in town. The big house held only Eli, Clara, and the dogs. The wood stove was always warm. She learned to make stew the way Eli's mother had made it. He showed her how. She learned to shoot a pistol as well as a rifle. She learned to ride a quarter horse across the frozen creek. She learned which calves were trouble and which were sweet. He learned the way she hummed when she sewed. He learned the way she liked her coffee. He learned to read the weather in the small line between her eyes. He learned to read her. Crane went to prison. The land baron's empire fell apart inside 6 months. His banker friends quietly returned the South 20 acres to the Hart Ranch. The sheriff came out for supper that spring. He brought a bundle of letters from back east. One of them was from Clara's father. It had been mailed the day before he died. It had been lost. It had only just arrived. She read it on the porch in the evening sun. The letter was 3 pages. It was an apology. It was a goodbye. It was an explanation. Her father had not known about Eli's father being paid. He had thought the debt was real. He had thought he was buying his daughter a roof and a man's name. He had hoped in his last clear hour that the rancher would be kind. He had not been able to do better. He had not had time. He had loved her. He had been sorry. She folded the letter. She put it in the wooden box on the mantel. She closed the lid. She did not cry. She had cried for him long ago. A year passed. Then another. The ranch grew. The herd doubled. A second house went up near the creek for the foreman and his new wife. The dogs grew gray around the muzzle. A small wooden cradle appeared in the loft. Then a small voice in the morning. Then small boots by the door beside the big boots. Then small hands learning to bridle a pony. Eli stood in the doorway one evening, watching his wife teach their son how to lift a saddle. He thought about the day she had fallen on the porch step. He thought about the paper in his hand. He thought about how close he had come to giving her back. He thought about how close he had come to never knowing her at all. He shook his head once at the memory. Then he set his hat on the peg. He walked out to lift the saddle for the boy. Some debts are not paid in money. Some are paid in a hand caught on a porch step. Some are paid in a whispered sentence at the end of a hard night. Some are paid in a quiet voice that says, "He's right." And some, the best ones, are paid every morning for the rest of a long, long life.